We're going to start off this morning. Well, first, I'm Nathan Novemsky, one of the faculty here, working much with the YCCI, sometimes even more than I want to. We're going to start off today with Eva Ascarza from Columbia Business School. She's a professor of marketing there. I just learned that word recently. She's a professor of marketing there after getting her PhD from the London Business School. She takes the analytic approach to marketing, as you'll see in what she shows us today, hopefully without too many equations and data tables and such. Studying all kinds of topics in consumer relationship management, churn, subscriptions, how do you keep people, how do you lose people, all that good stuff. She's won a number of awards. She's won the Frank Bass Award for Dissertation, which is quite a prestigious award in the marketing area. She's published in leading marketing journals like the Journal of Marketing Research and Marketing Science and others. So again, one of the leaders in our field in analytics. So I don't want to take too much of your time. Without further ado, Eva, please come on up.
Thank you very much. And I think it's the first time that somebody introduced me and used the last name as we pronounce in Spain, so thank you very much. So anyway, first of all, I want to start not just thanking the introduction, but thanking the organizers for putting together this amazing 2 days. So I've been enjoying it so much, so thank you very much for that. So what I want to talk about, I guess today we have to figure out where our slides are. There you go, we don't have to figure that out. It's here, right?
Yep, there you go.
Yeah. Thank you. So I want to talk about a paper that actually came up from a project that we had with someone from the industry. So this is a project with a colleague of mine, Odette Netzer at Columbia, and Peter Eves, who works at HEC Paris. So we're all the academics here, but Matt Danielson, he works at Globis. This is a big data analytics company that they focus mostly on telco companies. Their clients are like these kind of T-Mobile, Verizon, these guys, and they run a lot of campaigns for them and analyze the data. So actually they have an amazing capabilities for that. So it was a very nice collaboration because actually we could investigate the things that we wanted to investigate thanks to actually their data and their approach. So what is the paper about? The paper is about understanding the social effect of CRM campaigns, What do we mean by that? So let's think about CRM marketing. It's been there for maybe 30 years now or something like that. So what is the key idea when we tell companies to be more customer-centric, customer-oriented, as Pete was telling us yesterday? Well, you have a bunch of customers. You better figure out who are these customers that is going to be best to target. And how do we decide that? Well, let me figure out what is the CLV of the customer today. What is going to be the CLV if I actually do something to you? And if that increase is good, that delta CLV is higher, then I'm going to go for that guy. So what I put here is some money, thinking about, okay, different people will have different increase of CLV. And what do we tell people is, look, you should go for that guy. This is our guy today. We should target these people with our next CRM campaign because the return of that investment is going to be the highest. Makes total sense, totally good. I'm never going to disagree with Pete Fader, trust me. But what happens, so we want to add a new twist here, and it's a twist that we haven't added, the market has added it. What happens nowadays is that in many settings, many of the settings you work on, and many of the settings that many of us may work on, customers are connected. So the question is very simple. The question is, well, we know what happens to this guy, because we know a lot of individual data from them before, after, sensitivity to promotions. We know all that, but what we haven't figured out yet is what is going to happen to the people connected to this person. Right? So this is very simple. This is the question we asked in this research. So to formalize a little bit, I did remove all the slides with tables and equations, but I guess still I'm going to give you what we call the research question. And I'm going to formalize it, and the question is really, does the effect of these CRM campaigns, targeted CRM campaigns, have an effect beyond that target customer? I want to go beyond him or her, and then I want to see what happens to the people connected. I'm going to look at which behaviors are more affected, which of course is going to be dependent on the context I look at, but then we'll discuss later that how that expands to other settings. I'm going to look at how exactly is that this campaign is propagating, and I want to really look at what is actually the value for this. Is this managerially relevant or just something that we academics have fun with and it doesn't really translate to dollars? So this is what I plan to do in the 20 minutes. So let me start with the first challenge we faced. And many of you have, I'm sure that I've worked in similar issues. If I am going to try to understand what is the effect of Shiri, for example, buying a new product, on, say, Pete buying any product. I look at the data, and I see that Shiri bought something last month, and then I see that Pete bought something last month, and I said, there is influence here. Well, truth is, there might not be any influence whatsoever, because it could perfectly be that they both live in the same neighborhood, in which the store actually really dropped the prices so everybody adopts that product. And what I'm saying is influence is nothing but just a correlation. It could perfectly be that actually Pete convinced Shiri to buy the product. But the only thing that happened is he happens to live in Philly or in New York, so he had to wait longer to get the product there. So I see her first and then him, and I'm totally confused with the influence here. So because of all these aspects that happen when you look at just the data you have, they're going to be confusing you. It's going to be different to say influence. What we did is we ran an experiment, which is generally the best way to get away those things. So what we did was we contacted this, thanks to actually collaboration with Glavis, we contacted this cell phone company in some country in the Australasia continent. So this company is a telco company. Think about Verizon or T-Mobile. And what they did is they were willing to run this experiment to see actually what happens to the CRM campaigns and whether they propagate. So we didn't go for the full network. I'll explain you why in a second. What we did is we focused on a type of customers that the company wanted to run experiments with. Of course, this was a back and forth. And they said, look, let's go for these customers. These people are in this prepaid plan. You have to refill your account or top up, as we say in London. And then as long as you top up every 28 days, then the cell phone is active. When you do not top up, or you don't have any credit on your cell phone, you can receive calls but don't make any calls. And this call is suspended. So what happened, the company said, let me detect like 1,000 people who are about to be suspended, and you can play with those, right? So this is the people I have. So how do we play with those? We split them randomly, treatment and control. We flip a coin pretty much, and the person who are in the treatment condition, they get a text from the company saying, do you want some free money? To get this free money in your account, you just have to reply to this text. You just do that, and I give you some dollars in your account. By doing that, actually, you prevent suspension because now you have money in your account, right? So the way it worked was that they had, once you get the text, you have a week to say yes or no, and once you accept the promotion, you have 2 weeks to use the money. If you don't use it within 2 weeks, it's gone. It's not, you don't give them the free money forever. So now, we are mostly interested in what happened to the friends of these people, so let me tell you how we defined those friends. So we have to think about how to collect the data to analyze this. The way we thought about it was, look, this is let's say Shiri is my focal customer, right? The person that happened to be in the treatment or control condition. How I'm going to define the network around Shiri? So when we look back, all the calls and texts that Shiri had in the previous month. So I count a friend of Shiri or a part of the Ego network, anybody who texted her or the way around, anybody who called or the way around, more than once. We wanted to avoid calling the taxi driver, and it's how the company actually defines that. So anybody in this room who last month ever communicated with Shiri more than twice, in either text call, is part of her Ego network, right? So just for a little bit of the labelings, I'm gonna call Ego to Shiri, that's the Ego, and the alters is gonna be the people connected to her. And not to get very detailed into the conversation, but when you experiment in a network, you may face another challenge, which is you may have contamination, because if I treat Shiri and Shiri talks to Ronnie, and then Ronnie is actually connected to Pete, Pete is not a good control anymore because he can make that influence. So we make sure in the context of the cell phone that it's very, very easy to make sure that all these Ego networks are disconnected. And this is exactly what we did. So let me give you a little bit of the visual of how was the experiment and how we analyze it. Think about the usual treatment control, right? I have people in the treatment condition, people in the control condition. The folks in red, they got the test. The folks in black, they didn't get anything. Now, I identify the people connected to each of them. So these are the Ego networks that are totally disconnected to each other. So there is not going to be influence from them. They might be influenced if they have a third friend. I have to admit that, but not very, very nearby. So now, if I want to look at the effect of the promotion on the focal customers, I just have to compare the red people with the black people, right? That's easy. Now, because these guys were truly randomized, and I'm going to check that in a second, then if I'm going to compare the social effect, I only need to compare the yellow guys with the gray guys. because these people are going to be equivalent to these guys. The only difference is that their friend got and didn't get the connection, the promotion. Okay? So what's the data we looked at? We looked at the activity of the egos, let's say the Shiris of the world. Shiri is here, by the way, just so happen to be first row, you know. That's what you get in conferences. So I look at all the communications that Shiri makes, like in terms of calls and number of minutes and text, etc. I look at whether she gets suspended or not. In this type of prepaid, there is no churn of the egos because they just get deactivated for so long and then eventually the company kind of drops the line, but I don't have that long of horizon. And now about the alters, I do not know which plan an alter belongs to because anybody who called Jiri could be in a contract, could be in a prepay. So these guys, actually, I observe churn as well. So I'm going to observe the consumption of these guys, how many minutes, text, etc., and also whether they churn or not, whether they stay with the company. I have the 4 weeks before the experiment to make sure that my experiment was properly executed, and I have a lot of behavior during the 12 weeks after the experiment. This is how we check that the randomization was done properly. The first thing to do before analyzing any randomized experiment is actually let me make sure that people in the treatment control looked exactly alike. And we look at, for example, the calls they made, the calls they received, all behavior before the experiment. And we did find that these people were equivalent for the behaviors we observed. So that's good. Randomization check. And now let's look at actually what happened after the treatment. So I'm going to start with the egos, because it's the one that it's obvious we're going to have something there, we might think. So if I have the orange guy on the top, it's going to be like I'm talking about the egos, right? So the first thing we look at is whether this promotion actually prevented some suspension. That was the original plan. So what I'm going to show red, and the solid red always refers to the people who got treatment, and the dashed black refers to the people who did not. Good news, instead of suspension, what I have on the y-axis is the number of proportion of customers who actually got suspended. It's good. The people who got the treatment, the red line is actually below. Good news, at least our treatment, giving free money, prevented suspension. Actually, it was good for us, but hey. Now, let's look at how much these people are consuming. So I'm going to plot here both minutes, number of calls, and number of SMS. Consistently, we find, especially on calls and minutes that are very correlated, that those who got the treatment use more than those who didn't get the treatment. It's like, Eva, they got free money. Yeah? Truth is, the free money was only valid for the first 2 to 3 weeks, 1 week to accept it and 2 weeks to use it. These people are still using much more, 8 and 10 and 12 weeks after the treatment. So yeah, you hook them out with free money, but then they're still using much more. That was started to be good news for the company. The company would have stopped right here. This is what they wanted to see, the long-term effect of this type of treatment. I prevent suspension and I increase usage. Now, what we are really interested is to look at what happened to the alters. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to compare the friends of the treated people with the friends with the non-treated people. Again, neither of those got any monetary incentive. These people didn't get any free money to do anything with their cell phones. So let's look at number of minutes. This is the number of minutes somebody made. You call someone, this is you have initiated this communication. Look at this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful red line on top of the black line. So what actually we find is that the people who are connected to Shiri ended up using the cell phone more than those who were connected to, say, Pete, who was in the control condition. And we actually found that that's very powerful, personally. Somebody said, but wait. Well, somebody's my co-author of DeadNet. They say, but wait. What if, she just starts using the phone more, so she calls Michelle all the time because she's thinking about her work, her marketing paper, and then Michelle has to return the calls, right? So yeah, it's good for the company that Michelle is using more, but it's not that interesting, right? So I said, okay, let's look at the calls of the friends of Shiri, and let's remove all those calls that went back to Shiri. And I want to show you that even those calls were actually in effect, and this is exactly what I show here. We took away those calls that actually didn't count for that much, and actually still the red line is really on top of the line. I don't know about you, for us, this is the puppy monkey baby moment. That's it. So not only consumption, let's look at churn, or literally usage, let's look at churn. You see some gray area. It's not that the projector has a problem, it's that we tested all these differences with econometrics and with some regressions. If it's gray area, is that it was not significant. So I want to be like fully disclosive with you. So what you see really, the lines like properly is like those were statistically significant tested with different approaches. So what we find again, suspension is a bit lower in the short term, and it's very, very interesting. Churn for the friends of the treated alters, for the alters of the treated people, is much lower, significantly lower than churn of the people, the friends of the people who were not treated. So not only these people ended up consuming more, actually these people churn less, which is very, very relevant for the company. So what have I said so far? I said, look, I have a treatment, magic treatment, and I show you there is an effect on the ego behavior. There is also an effect on the alter behavior. Now, I'm saying effect on the alter behavior. Truth is, there cannot be an effect of the treatment, direct effect of the treatment on these alters because I didn't give them absolutely anything. That even has to come from the line there, right? So this is obvious, but we wanted to test it further with the data we have. We wanted to actually test that I'm seeing here like averages of the alters of treated, averages of the alter of control. Now the question is it indeed true that those egos, the Shiris of the world, let me look at if those who increase their consumption the most are actually those whose friends increase their consumption the most, which is really, I want to look at the causal relationship between somebody else's consumption and somebody else's consumption. And now I can do that because it's not just taking whether she bought the product and he bought the product, because now I have a nice treatment that actually is giving me this variation that allows me to actually say something causal about this relationship. This is what we do. I'm not going to go, this is the part that I killed last night, so I'm not going to get that excited about it. Truly what I do now is instead of looking at overall behavior of Shiri, I look at just only the minutes that Shiri called Michelle, say. I'm going to take each alter, and I'm going to look at how many minutes she actually called Michelle after the treatment. And then I'm going to relate that behavior, that variable, with whether now Michelle used more or less. So it's like if you run this campaign and you tell me, but I want you to show me that it's because she used more. It's not because you're fancy treatment. This is exactly what I'm doing right now. So I'm not going to go into the details, but what we do is we do something called instrumental variable regression here because we have some very nice instrument, blah, blah, blah. What we find is, indeed, when the ego to the alter minutes are higher, then these are the alters that show the biggest effect. When the calls from the ego to the alter are highest, these are the alters that actually reduce churn the most, which is really going into more or less into the mechanism of actually what is going on and how to take it to different campaigns. Now, this is all the kind of the plots with the effects. Let me give you a little bit of magnitude of these effects. So, okay, I didn't show you how much people increase. I could be that I expand those axes, and I'll show you these beautiful red lines, right? And then people ended up using 1 extra minute. And it wouldn't be the first time that I've seen that, and maybe not the first that I've done that. But here, how big is this spillover effect? So, just computing based on the consumption, what we find in this treatment, because it was free money, I mean, free money is expensive to give, but it was worth it in this case, the increase in usage of the egos, of the shares of the world, it was 35%. That's big. That's an average increase in consumption, which translated to a 10% increase in the alters, which I personally believe is pretty big too. This is quite sizable. Now, did everybody increase consumption of others in the same way? No. Doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make sense to say that when the relationship is stronger, I should affect a stronger effect, or the relation is weaker, but it's like we don't call it that much each other, and then it would be smaller. Yes, indeed. So what we did is we look at before the treatment how many times each alter was calling the ego, and we defined it as a strength of the tie. If I call Shiri a lot, it means that it's very important for me. And indeed, what we find is that those with weak relationships, actually, the spillover is much lower, as is expected. Those with strong connections have a much higher spillover. This is the goal for targeting. If you're going to, start taking into account these social effects of sharing campaigns, which I think you should, first step is do it. But second, now you're going to do it in a smart way. Now you know that not this influence goes the same across everybody. Now you can identify these people with stronger relationships and going after those. Now, I said magnitude, and I give you percentages. If Ronnie is sitting there, what is he thinking? For those not knowing Ronnie, this is what Ronnie is thinking. I promise you. Show me the money.
Can't understand how you don't like this movie.
So what I do as the magnitude of the effect, I want to look at dollars. I was like, what does it mean in dollars that actually this spillover that I'm telling you about? So what we did is, I want to quantify, not for the Shiris of the world. So the company computes the ROI with these campaigns based on her profitability, right? Now, what I want to compute is the profitability of everybody but Shiri. That's what I'm going to do. Because it's the people that actually the company hasn't even thought about starting analyzing. So I look at all the alters, I remove the egos, and I know that these people use more and churn less. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just combine these two metrics. I'm going to project this behavior for 3 months, which is all the data I have. I could go to infinity, but I would require a lot of assumptions from my side. I just go conservative here, and I'm going to look at their behavior in the next 3 months, which is the data I have, both usage and churn. And what I do now is all these streams of revenue, actually profit, because I put some margin from the company, I take it to today. And I'm going to discount it to today, the same way you compute CLV. And I'm going to compare each profitability of the friends of the treated versus the friends of not treated. And I get a $0.85. So 0.85 sounds like a small number, but actually think about it. Each of these guys, the Ronnies that get the treatment, they have, on average, at least in my data, 5 to 6 connections. That means that 5 of 6 of these guys are giving me an extra $1. So actually, the ROI of the campaign now is not just the effect on the people who got the treatment, but on the people who are connected to them. So let me conclude with this, and then we can open if there is some time for questions. So the conclusion of this paper is really CRM targeted campaigns can and do affect the network and go beyond the targeted customer. And in our case, we're looking at a cell phone company, and we found that those behaviors affected are both churn and usage. And we found that actually the propagation happens through the consumption of the egos per se, and we have some quantification of that. This is what we find with this particular context and this particular data, but what I want to open now is, and this is what we truly believe is, we don't believe this is just for telco companies. We don't think this is a phenomenon that exists only in these particular settings. Because if you think, where should be the settings what are the settings that you should be thinking about? Well, any setting in which my usage of the service gets affected somehow by others also using it. Let's say I use PayPal to pay friends, or Venmo, right? The more friends using it is better for me. The more I see friends using Venmo because I get notifications, I'm reminded of Venmo, so chances are that their consumption is going to affect my consumption, right? Video games is a whole different, I think is the poster child for this type of effects, because I'm playing Candy Crush against my mom, and if she keeps being better and better, then I'm going to be more motivated as well. So what we call it, we said any setting with what is called the network externality, it's actually a good setting to actually start investigating those phenomena. So this is for where I would look for those things. And also, what do I do about it? The first thing I would do about that is that in settings when this is present, obviously you have to test it, but definitely the ROI of its campaign, you should be thinking also beyond the targeted customer. Yes, we targeted this person because we thought it was going to increase the CLV, but actually let's think about the spillover of that approach, of that intervention. Now, targeting might become a little bit more tricky, but yet it's easy once you understand the effects, how they're going. Now, who you should target? Should you target the person with a huge delta of CLV who has no influence on anybody? Or you should actually be willing to target some other people that might have a higher influence. Now, remember the magnitude of the effects. Don't get bananas with the influencers if the CLV doesn't give you anything, because the first order effect was much better. I'm just saying we have to take that one also into account. And then the third one is, I've been talking to different, not these companies, but some companies after this, and many of them say, oh, but I cannot know that because I don't have that data. And my answer always is, no, you do have the data. You are not summarizing the data and tracking the data you need, but you have the data. So also I want to kind of encourage people to start thinking about, also the connections to your customers. Yesterday in the ski resort, they know who are you skiing with. So this is just one example of they have this data. How you use the data, probably not in this regard, but maybe actually useful to do it that way. With all this, I'm gonna thank you all for your attention. Now my friends clap. Would you like Jerry Maguire? So I don't know the timing for the questions. I'm more than happy.
We could probably take like one question.
Excellent.
Let me remind whoever asks the question. Ronnie, please use your mic and hold the button.
Social influence has a lot of things, right? It can be being affected socially by social signal, by social influence, by habit, by being aware of the product. And it seems that in your case, in the data that you have, it's very specific in terms of habits. And I'll say what it means. That you get to use. Like there are periods where I hardly use the phone, and there are periods where I use the phone more often. And I think it relates to habit. It might be different in other circumstances.
There's a big distinction of all these you mentioned. Is like, one is this influence happens because I'm telling you something new you didn't know, which is generally for adopting products. Totally, is not what we have here because everybody had the service already. There is something here about the behavior of using the cell phone. And we're back and forth with the company trying to figure out what exactly is that. Because is it that you create the habit of calling your mom because I'm calling you more? Honestly, for me, this is hard to believe that way. But what we believe is that it's our belief, we haven't tested, we don't have the data, is that at least in cell phone here, there is a lot of type of consumption that happened years ago with calls and texts that is now being shifted to Skype, being shifted to WhatsApp, being shifted to WeChat. So the way we understand this influence is not by creating a habit, because people are not using more and more over time. People are using more than they control people. I didn't make the distinction clear. So what we believe in this particular case is happening is that because you keep texting me, for example, I text you back and I text others back. Not back, but I text others. Because you made me be closer to my cell phone, I keep using my cell phone. So what the particular behavior we believe is going on here is the lack of moving away from calls and texts, going to other methods of communication, which obviously in the other settings would be a total different thing. Would be keeping playing a game versus another game, or exactly. Yes. Thank you very much.